Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into a really fascinating book, one that's had quite a bit of influence, actually. Peter Thiel's Zero to One.
Absolutely. Notes on startups or how to build the future. And Thiel's just theorizing here.
No, definitely not. I mean, this is the guy who co-founded PayPal, Palantir.
Right. And he was in early on huge companies like Facebook and SpaceX.
Right.
So he's seen things from the inside.
Exactly. That track record, it gives him a pretty unique perspective on how big things actually get built. His lens is quite specific.
And when he talks about creating something completely new, that move from 0 to 1, it really lands because he's actually done it more than once.
That real-world angle is what makes it so compelling, I think, worth really digging into.
For sure.
So our mission today really is to get under the hood of Thiel's core argument, this idea that real progress isn't just about tweaking things that exist.
The one-to-end stuff.
Right, the iterations,
Right.
but about creating genuinely new things, that 0 to 1 jump.
And why startups are so often the engine for that kind of radical change.
Yeah, we'll unpack that and contrast it with the more incremental improvements. But it's important to say up front, Thiel himself makes this point clearly. This isn't a formula, is it? Not a step-by-step guide to riches.
No, not at all. It's more about a way of thinking, a framework, maybe.
I think that's a good way to put it. Understanding a framework for approaching building something significant, how you might spot those elusive opportunities for real innovation.
And maybe avoid some common pitfalls along the way.
Exactly. So let's get into it.
Okay, so that core idea first,
Yeah.
0 to 1 versus 1 to N. It sounds simple, but it's fundamental to how Thiel sees progress.
Right. Two basic modes.
Yeah. 1 N, that's basically globalization in his view. You take something that works, a product, a business model, whatever, and you copy it, scale it up, spread it around.
Like opening more coffee shops based on a successful one.
Exactly. That's horizontal progress.
Yeah.
They're taking things from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on. Now, 0 to 1,
Yeah.
that's vertical. It's about creating something fundamentally new, something that wasn't there before.
And his word for that is technology.
Technology. But it's crucial how he defines it. It's much broader than just, computers and software.
Yeah, I think most people hear tech and immediately think Silicon Valley apps.
Right. But for Thiel, technology is any new and better way of doing things. Full stop.
So it could be a new energy source, a new medical treatment.
Or a new way to structure a company,
Mm-hmm.
a new material, a breakthrough in logistics, anything that represents a genuine leap forward, a fundamentally better way, that's the 0 to 1.
That distinction, putting it against globalization, is interesting. He maps it onto history, too, doesn't he?
He does, and it really helps clarify things.
Yeah.
He points to the period from 1815 to 1914. You have both happening intensely.
The Industrial Revolution and massive global expansion.
Exactly. Huge tech leaps and spreading those ideas worldwide. Then contrast that with, say, the period after World War I up to the early 70s.
Yeah.
Technology kept moving, but globalization kind of stalled a bit.
And then more recently.
Since the 70s, he argues, we've seen hyper-globalization, spreading existing things everywhere, largely driven by IT, but maybe less fundamental technological breakthroughs across the board.
So these forces aren't always linked.
Right. They can happen together, or one can dominate. And a really critical point he makes is that this 0 to 1 progress, creating new stuff, it's not guaranteed. It's not automatic.
Yeah, for most of human history, things didn't really progress in that way, did they?
Not in a sustained way, no. For millennia, societies were largely zero-sum. One group getting richer often meant another group getting poorer. Wealth was seen as finite.
Until
Really the steam engine, around the 1760s. That was a game changer. It unlocked the potential to create new wealth, not just redistribute existing wealth. That's when you start seeing this exponential growth in living standards, this idea that the pie can actually get bigger.
So progress isn't inevitable, it has to be created.
Precisely. It requires breakthroughs, the right conditions, deliberate effort. It doesn't just happen.
Okay, so if this 0 to 1 creation is so vital, where does it tend to come from? Thiel has a very strong opinion on this.
He does. He points squarely at startups, small groups bound by a mission.
Not big corporations, not lone inventors.
Less so, generally. He argues large organizations become inherently slow, bureaucratic, risk-averse. Too much energy goes into maintaining the status quo, internal politics.
Signaling work rather than doing work, as he puts it sometimes.
Exactly. And while a lone genius might have a brilliant idea, turning that into an entire industry usually takes more than one person.
So startups hit that sweet spot.
That's the argument. They combine the focus and agility of a small group with enough collective power to actually execute a big vision. He uses examples like the U.S. founding fathers or the guys who left Shockley Semiconductor to form Fairchild, the traitorous eight. Small groups with a shared purpose.
I like his definition of a startup. What was it again?
The largest group of people you can convince of a plan to build a different future.
That's interesting. It emphasizes the belief, the shared vision.
Right, and their key strength, new thinking. They aren't constrained by how things have always been done. They can, and often must, question everything and rethink business from scratch. That's where the 0 to 1 potential lies.
Okay, but then he talks about how things went maybe a bit off track after the dot-com bubble burst in the late 90s. Sets the scene there.
Yeah, the late 90s, immense hype around the internet, fortunes made on paper overnight. Then, bam, the crash. Big recession, slow recovery, it left scars.
A lot of skepticism crept in.
Definitely. And Thiel argues that Silicon Valley drew some specific conclusions from that crash. 4 main lessons became kind of ingrained.
Okay, what were they?
First, make incremental advances. Big visions were seen as dangerous, leading to bubbles. Keep it small, keep it safe.
Lesson 2?
Stay lean and flexible. Long-term, detailed plans. That was seen as arrogant. The future's unpredictable, so just react. Agility over strategy.
Right. Third?
Improve on the competition. Don't try to create entirely new markets too risky. Just find an existing market and do it slightly better.
And the last one? Focus on competition.
Yeah. Competition is good. More startups fighting it out means more innovation, supposedly. That was the thinking.
But Thiel pushes back hard against these lessons, doesn't he?
He really does. He sees them not as wisdom, but as dogma. Maybe understandable reactions at the time, but ultimately limiting.
How so? What's the problem with being incremental and lean and competitive?
The problem, he argues, is that they collectively steer people away from 0 to 1 thinking. They encourage imitation, not invention. Focusing on tiny improvements in existing markets just leads to everyone doing basically the same thing. It's all 1 to N.
And that ties into his really contrarian view on competition itself.
Exactly. Which brings us to maybe one of the most famous or infamous ideas in the book. His take on monopoly versus competition.
Right. Most economics classes, most business thinking praises competition, drives prices down, spurs innovation.
That's the standard view. Perfect competition, lots of firms, no one makes real profit, consumers win. Thiel flips this. He contrasts perfect competition, where profits are competed away, with monopoly, where one company dominates and can set its own prices. But, and this is key, he's talking about a specific kind of monopoly.
Not the evil, mustache-twirling kind from the board game.
No. Not monopolies created by government favors or shady tactics. He means a company that becomes a monopoly simply by being so much better at what it does that no one else can offer a close substitute.
Like Google and search, maybe,
Yeah.
once they pulled ahead.
That's a prime example he uses. Or PayPal in the early days of email payments. They were just head and shoulders above the alternatives. That's the kind of monopoly he values.
Okay, so it's a monopoly earned through innovation. But still, isn't a monopoly bad for customers eventually? Less choice, higher prices?
That's the standard fear, based on a static view of the world. If nothing changes, yeah, monopolists could just extract rent. But Thiel argues the world is dynamic, meaning these creative monopolies, as he calls them, actually create new categories in abundance. Think about Apple and the iPhone. They created a monopoly in the high-end smartphone market for a while. But that hurt consumers. Or did it give them something radically new they didn't have before?
Good point. It created a whole new ecosystem.
Right. So in this dynamic view, the promise of achieving that kind of durable, profitable monopoly is actually what drives companies to make the huge, risky investments needed for 0 to 1 breakthroughs.
Because if you succeed, the reward is potentially enormous and long-lasting.
Exactly. Companies fighting tooth and nail in a perfectly competitive market just don't have the margins or the stability to fund ambitious long-term R&D. They're too busy surviving week to week.
So the pursuit of monopoly in this sense fuels progress. He even takes a shot at economists' obsession with competition, right?
Yeah, he suggests it's almost like a holdover from 19th century physics, this focus on equilibrium, which in business terms he equates to stasis or even heat death, where all energy dissipates and nothing new happens.
Interesting analogy, which leads him to argue that competition itself can be actively harmful.
Yes, he thinks the phrase business is war is wrong. It's competition that's like war.
How so?
because it makes companies focus on their rivals instead of on creating value or pursuing unique goals. It's destructive. He uses Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet.
The Montagues and Capulets?
All right. They were so obsessed with hating each other that they destroyed themselves. He sees companies doing the same thing, getting locked in these rivalries, losing sight of the bigger picture.
He mentioned Microsoft versus Google?
Yeah, arguing that while they were busy fighting each other over existing territory, Apple snuck up and captured the future of mobile. Their competition blinded them.
And this competitive focus leads to copying, too.
Definitely. Everyone watches the perceived leader and mimics them. Think about when Square came out with its mobile card reader. Suddenly, everyone rushed to make a similar one. They were competing on features, maybe price, but not creating something fundamentally new. It reinforces one-to-end thinking.
So focusing too much on rivals is a trap.
A major trap. He even tells the story of Informix, a database company whose CEO became obsessed with beating Oracle. He focused so much on the rivalry that the company completely missed the changing landscape and imploded.
Sometimes he suggests it's better to just stop competing, like merging.
Exactly. He mentions the merger between Confinity, his original company, and Elon Musk's X.com. They were fierce rivals in the early online payment space, burning through cash trying to beat each other. Merging to form PayPal was the breakthrough move.
So step 1 is recognizing competition can be bad. Step 2 is figuring out how to build that good monopoly. What are the characteristics?
He boils it down to a few key elements that successful monopolies tend to share. They don't all need everything, but some combination is usually present. First, and maybe most critical, is proprietary technology.
They're not just slightly better tech, right?
Right. It needs to be at least 10 times better than the closest substitute on some key dimension. That 10x factor creates a real defensible advantage. It overcomes inertia and skepticism.
How do you get 10x?
Either through a totally new invention, he gives speculative examples like curing baldness or eliminating sleep, or through vastly superior integration and design, like the iPad bringing existing tech together in a way that felt revolutionary.
Okay, so proprietary tech is number 1. What else?
Network effects. This is huge, especially for software and marketplaces. The product becomes more valuable as more people use it. Facebook, LinkedIn, eBay, classic examples. Each new user adds value for all the existing users.
Makes it hard for competitors to catch up once a network takes hold.
Very hard. Then there's economies of scale. Basically, the cost per unit goes down as you produce more. Software is great for this high initial development cost, but near zero cost to replicate. This lets dominant players undercut smaller rivals.
And that's the last word.
Branding. Building a powerful brand that resonates with customers creates loyalty and allows for premium pricing. Apple is the master class here, obviously. People trust the brand and are willing to pay more.
So tech, network effects, scale, brand. But how do you start building that? You don't just launch a global brand on day 1.
No, absolutely not. His advice here is crucial. Start small. Pick a very specific, narrow niche market. A group of customers with a specific problem that you can solve exceptionally well.
And dominate that niche first.
Exactly. Own it completely. Be the undisputed best solution for that small group. Once you've done that, you have a secure base, cash flow, and credibility to expand into adjacent markets. Think of Amazon starting with books or Facebook starting with Harvard students.
Dominate a niche, then expand. Makes sense. He also had some interesting thoughts on the word disruption, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's critical of the obsession with disruption in Silicon Valley.
Why? Isn't that what innovators do? Disrupt old industries.
He argues that framing it as disruption inherently focuses you on the old thing you're trying to replace. It puts you in direct conflict with established players, often leading to costly battles you might not win.
Like Napster taking on the music industry directly.
Exactly, a fight they couldn't win. Thiel argues it's better to focus on creating new value, building something positive rather than defining yourself by opposition to the old. If you create something truly new and valuable, it might displace old ways as a side effect, but the focus should be on the creation itself. Don't pick fights unnecessarily.
That ties into another big theme. The importance of having a definite plan, a clear vision of the future.
Yes, this whole definite versus indefinite thinking is central to his worldview. He contrasts different historical periods and even geographical regions based on how they view the future.
Can you break down those 4 quadrants again? Definite, indefinite, and optimist, pessimistic.
Sure, so you have 2 axes. First, is the future seen as definite, something you can plan and shape, or indefinite,
No.
random, unpredictable? Second, is the outlook optimistic, future will be better, or pessimistic, future will be worse?
Okay.
So indefinite pessimism. The future's bleak and there's nothing much we can do about it, just kind of react and hope for the best. Thiel associates this with modern Europe, maybe.
But a definite pessimism.
That would be knowing the future will be bad, but having a specific plan for how to prepare or deal with it. He doesn't dwell on this one as much.
Okay, what about the optimistic side?
Definite optimism. This is the belief that the future will be better because we will plan and build it. Think big infrastructure projects, the space race, scientific breakthroughs of the past, the West from, say, the 17th century up to the 1960s. They had blueprints for the future.
And the last one, which he argues is dominant now.
Indefinite optimism. The belief that the future will somehow get better, but without any specific plan or vision for how, just kind of expecting progress to happen automatically. Thiel pins this on the U.S. since the early 80s.
And he sees problems with this indefinite optimism.
Big problems. He argues it leads to shuffling existing things around rather than creating new things. Think finance, law, consulting careers often focused on optimizing or managing current systems, not inventing new ones. It breeds a focus on optionality rather than commitment.
How does that manifest?
In finance, maybe it's excessive diversification, betting on everything because you don't know what will win. In philosophy, maybe it's focusing only on fair processes without specifying desirable outcomes. Even in R&D, like drug discovery, relying more on random screening than targeted design.
So for Thiel, building the future requires that definite optimism, a clear plan.
Absolutely. You need a vision, a blueprint. He uses Steve Jobs' Apple as an example of definite optimism, meticulous multi-year planning, a strong vision for products that didn't exist yet. Good design, in Thiel's view, isn't just aesthetics. It's the result of careful, definite planning.
And this relates to startups how?
He sees a startup as the ultimate expression of definite optimism. It's the largest endeavor where you can still have a specific plan and exert real control, rejecting the idea that the future is just random chance.
Okay, let's shift to another concept he emphasizes, the power law. What's that about?
The power law describes distributions where a small number of inputs or participants account for the vast majority of the output or results. It's a principle of extreme inequality, basically. Money makes money. Captures some of it, exponential growth.
And this applies strongly to venture capital.
Hugely. Thiel calls it the biggest secret in VC. The best single investment in a successful fund typically outperforms the entire rest of the fund combined.
Wow, that's extreme. One company makes or breaks the whole fund.
Essentially, yes, for the truly great funds. He uses Founders Fund's investments in Facebook and Palantir as examples. Those two generated more returns than all their other successful investments put together.
Why isn't this more widely understood or acted upon?
Well, a few reasons. It often takes years for the true scale of the winners to become apparent. Early on, companies might look more similar. Also, investors naturally want to spread their bets and might find it hard to admit just how uneven the returns will likely be. It's psychologically difficult to focus only on potential huge winners and cut losses quickly on others.
What are the implications then for founders, for investors, for people choosing jobs?
For investors, it means you must find those potential exponential growers. Average returns won't cut it. For founders, it underscores the importance of aiming for that massive, category-defining success. And for individuals, Thiel suggests the difference between companies is often far greater than the difference between roles within companies. Meaning joining a company that's truly on a rocket ship trajectory, even in a relatively junior role or with less equity, can be vastly more rewarding than being a star player at a company that's going nowhere fast. Find the best company and get on board.
Owning 0.1% of the next Google is better than 100% of something that fails.
Exactly. The power law perspective changes how you evaluate opportunities.
Okay, let's talk about secrets and the founder's paradox. What does Thiel mean by secrets? Not classified documents, right?
No. Secrets, for Thiel, are important truths about the world that few people recognize or believe. They're unconventional ideas or untapped opportunities hidden in plain sight. Could be a scientific secret, a new law of physics, a market secret, an unmet customer need, a process secret, a radically more efficient way to build something. He argues that progress happens when people discover and act on these secrets.
And he thinks we've stopped believing in secrets.
To some extent, yes. He worries about a world where people assume all the big problems are solved or that the frontiers are closed. That leads to complacency. He contrasts this with periods like the Renaissance or the Scientific Revolution, where people actively sought out hidden knowledge. Andrew Wiles proving Fermat's last theorem after centuries is an example he gives, believing something difficult was possible.
So a great company is built around one of these secrets.
That's his view. A great company has a unique insight, a secret that differentiates it, that gives it an edge. It's almost like a conspiracy to change the world based on this hidden truth. And you only share that secret with the core team who needs to know.
Which brings us to the team
Yeah.
and the founder. He talks about the founder's paradox. What's that?
He observes that many legendary founders seem like bundles of contradictions. They might be intensely introverted, but also incredibly charismatic leaders. Outsiders who challenge everything, yet insiders who know how to navigate the system. Maybe cash poor personally, but paper billionaires.
Extreme traits often coexisting.
Exactly. He suggests founders often don't fall on a normal distribution curve. They're at the extremes. Maybe that unique combination is necessary to do something radically new. He mentions Richard Branson cultivating an extreme persona or historical figures who attracted both fame and notoriety.
And these founders are crucial, irreplaceable.
Thiel argues strongly that the founder's vision and drive are uniquely important, especially in the early stages. They embody the company's secret and mission in a way a professional manager often can't. The founding moment, he says, is critical. Getting the core principles, and especially the initial team right, is paramount.
Choosing co-founders sounds like a big deal.
Huge. He compares it to marriage. Shared history, aligned values, complementary skills, absolutely vital, and very hard to fix if you get it wrong initially.
And building the rest of the team. What's important there?
Alignment. Getting everyone pulling in the same direction towards that long-term vision.
Yep.
Equity is a tool for this, aligning incentives. But he cautions against simplistic approaches like equal splits, which often don't reflect different contributions or timing.
What attracts the right people then, beyond just money?
The mission. Explaining why the company exists, what unique thing it's trying to achieve, what its secret is. He also notes that early teams often benefit from being quite homogenous in certain ways.
Homogenous. That sounds counterintuitive today.
Yeah, but his point, using the early PayPal team as an example, is that shared backgrounds or interests, in their case, a kind of nerd culture obsessed with digital currency, allowed them to communicate and work together incredibly efficiently early on. He frames successful startups as being almost like cults, but in a positive sense.
Meaning
They are fanatically right about something important that outsiders just don't get yet. That shared belief and unique culture is a strength, even if it looks weird from the outside.
okay, so you've got your secret, your team, your potentially monopolistic product. But people need to actually buy it, right? Thiel talks about sales and distribution.
Yes, and he argues this is massively underrated, especially by tech people. There's this engineer's fantasy, the field of dreams fallacy. If you build it, they will come.
But they don't necessarily.
Not automatically, no. Distribution, actually getting the product to customers, is often just as hard, if not harder, than building the product itself. And it needs to be considered from the very beginning, integrated into the product design.
He also says sales skills are often hidden.
Right. Good salespeople are like good actors. You don't see the acting.
Mm-hmm.
Many roles crucial for distribution don't have sales in the title. Think business development, marketing, account management. Even CEOs are constantly selling the vision to employees, selling the company to investors.
So everyone sells, in a way.
Pretty much. If you think your product is so good it sells itself, you're probably the one doing the selling without realizing it. He also makes a power law point about distribution. He suggests that usually one distribution channel will be vastly more effective for a given product than all others combined. The key is to identify and master that single best channel, rather than dabbling ineffectively in many.
Makes sense. Focus is key again. Now, what about the role of computers and AI in all this? Is it about replacing humans?
No. Thiel pushes back against that narrative, at least for the foreseeable future. He emphasizes complementarity, not substitution.
Humans and computers working together.
Exactly. He sees computers as fundamentally tools. They excel at processing vast amounts of data, finding patterns we can't. Humans excel at judgment, creativity, asking the right questions, complex planning. The biggest gains come from combining these strengths.
So AI helps humans solve problems rather than replacing them.
That's his focus. Computers don't have intentions or desires like humans do. They're instruments. Using them effectively lets us augment our own capabilities and achieve things neither could do alone. He sees technology, particularly AI used as a tool, as a way to escape the zero-sum competition that might arise from globalization alone.
So the strong AI singularity concerns are overblown for now.
He thinks they're a distant concern, maybe 22nd century stuff. The immediate opportunity, he argues, is leveraging technology to help humans build a better world today. Focus on complementarity.
This brings us back to evaluating startup potential. He mentions several key questions, particularly in the context of why many clean tech companies failed in the 2000s.
Right, he uses the clean tech bust as a case study. Many companies had good intentions, but failed because they got fundamental things wrong. He highlights issues like,
Timing.
yeah, misjudging market readiness or thinking progress would be exponential, like Moore's law for chips, when solar panel improvement was more linear, making false analogies.
Market confusion.
Absolutely. Sometimes claiming a niche for differentiation, but then seeking huge valuations based on the entire global energy market. Lack of clarity on who the actual customer was and how big that specific segment really was.
What about the people involved?
Often, he saw non-technical executives, maybe good at fundraising, suits and ties, but lacking deep understanding of the product and technology needed. A focus on hype over substance.
And distribution again.
A classic problem. Neglecting how hard it is to actually sell and deliver complex physical products into established industries. He uses Better Place, the battery swapping company, as an example of underestimating distribution challenges.
But Tesla succeeded where others failed. Why?
Thiel argues Tesla got these key questions right. They had superior technology, that 10x advantage, started in a specific niche, high-end sports cars, had a charismatic founder deeply involved in the product, nailed their branding, and critically timed their big government loan perfectly during a unique political window. They addressed all the key dimensions.
So it's not enough just to be in a big market. You need that focused strategy.
Precisely. Like Facebook starting just with Harvard. Dominate your niche first, solve a specific problem exceptionally well.
Which loops back to the founder, that paradoxical figure. He does examples from PayPal.
Yeah, the PayPal Mafia, as they became known. Lots of intense, somewhat eccentric, highly driven individuals with diverse but often overlapping interests. The kind of people who might seem odd individually, but created something powerful together.
It reinforces that idea of founders being outliers.
Exactly. Possessing those extreme, sometimes contradictory traits seems correlated with building something truly new. That intense focus, the insider-outsider perspective, the ability to inspire intense loyalty or sometimes controversy.
It's a challenging archetype.
Definitely. And society seems to oscillate between idolizing these figures, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and vilifying them. But Thiel's point is that their unique drive and vision are often essential for creating that 0-to-1 value, something harder to replicate in more bureaucratic structures.
Okay, so to try and wrap this up, Thiel's core message is really about the paramount importance of creating genuinely new things, that 0-to-1 leap.
Right, that's the engine of real progress, and startups, with their focus and ability to harbor secrets, are often the best vehicle for it.
And achieving that requires deliberate, definite thinking. Planning for a future you intend to build, not just reacting to circumstances.
Yeah, and finding those unique opportunities, those secrets others miss. Focusing intensely on creating something dramatically better, that 10x improvement within a specific niche first.
And crucially, recognizing that head-to-head competition is often a destructive distraction, and that getting your creation out into the world distribution is just as vital as the invention itself.
Couldn't summarize it better. It's a call to be ambitious, contrarian, and focused on building, not just competing.
Which brings us to a final thought for everyone listening. Thiel really challenges us to consider how we view the future. Is it something fixed or something we shape? As you think about your own goals, your work, your industry, are you operating with a definite plan, searching for those unconventional secrets? Or perhaps drifting with a more indefinite outlook? Thiel's challenge, really, is to think for yourself, to look beyond the conventional wisdom and to find those singular ways to actually create a better future, to make that leap, however small or large, from 0 to 1. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.